I'm coming. I'm finally coming, Andre. I was the happiest I had ever been in my life. Couldn't help but feel giddy with excitement as I hit send. Instantly, my phone flashed with Andre's Yash Shari. Don't joke. No joking. I got the job. I texted back. Says fantastique. When you here? I couldn't help but smile like a teenager in love because of how impatient his text sounded. Soon, baby. We had been texting, calling, video calling each other for the past 7 or 8 months, I guess. What was supposed to be just a single weird encounter and a once-in-a-lifetime adventure turned out to be the best thing in my life. Though neither of us had confessed. I could not be more sure of the love we share for each other, which was exactly why I was going to shift to France. I managed to find a well-paying job as a content creator in one of the biggest companies there, thanks to my travel content on my channel, which soon is going to be bombarded with France travel videos. Can't wait to go to France. Sure, there was many reasons I was excited to go to France, but I knew in my heart, and I think Andre did too, that I was only going there for him. 2 weeks later. Landon! Andre called out, his English still a bit broken, but full of affection. You, so many books. You read a lot. I looked up from a box of books and smiled. Yeah, I do. They're kind of my thing. Just trying to figure out where to put them all. Andre looked over, holding a stack of plates. He carefully placed them on the kitchen counter and then turned to me with a thoughtful look. How, keep books here. He pointed to a space on a nearby shelf. That's a great spot, I said, moving a few things around to make room. He flashed me a charming smile that I was only too happy to return. It had only been a couple of days since I arrived in Paris and officially moved into the apartment of Andre. The place was starting to feel like home, though there were still boxes scattered around. We'd spent the last few days unpacking, organizing, and getting used to living together. It was a new chapter, and I was loving every minute of it. Today, we were tackling the remaining boxes in the living room. As I placed the books on the shelf, Andre walked over, gave me a quick peck on the cheek, and started to help me with the larger boxes. You know, I said, as I handed him a framed picture, this is really starting to feel like home. Andre took the picture and carefully placed it on the shelf. I am happy too. It's very nice. You here with me. I reached over and gently brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. I'm happy too. I've been looking forward to this for so long. He looked up at me with a soft smile. Me too. It's like a dream come true. Andre nodded, then reached for my hand, giving a gentle squeeze. We make special. Together. The simple gesture made my heart swell. I leaned in and gave him a quick, soft kiss. Thank you for everything. I couldn't ask for a better partner. He blushed slightly and looked down, his smile widening. You, welcome. Happy you like it here. I pulled him into a warm embrace. I do. I really do. And I'm so excited for all the memories we're going to make in this place. Andre rested his chin on top of my head. Me too. We stayed like that for a moment, just enjoying the closeness. The apartment felt warmer with each passing minute, and it was moments like these that made it feel like home. A week later. Your hair! This is so soft, he murmured as he gently rubbed shampoo in my hair. Je sais, très jealous. I chuckled, leaning back into his touch. Well, thank you. Your hair's not too bad either. I let out a playful laugh and turned to face him. Andre's fingers moved down to my back, and he began to wash my shoulders. This nice, ensemble, he said, his voice warm and affectionate. I reached up and wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him close. It really is. I never imagined I'd get to share these little moments with you. He looked at me with a soft smile, his blue eyes sparkling with happiness. Mon aussi, it's perfect. The steam made everything feel cozy, and the water warmed us up as we stood there, just enjoying each other's presence. Andre gently brushed the soap off my skin, and I couldn't help but feel tingles all over my body. We playfully splashed each other with water, laughing as droplets fell around the small shower space. Andre's laugh was infectious, and I found myself grinning from ear to ear. He pulled me closer, and we shared a tender kiss under flowing water. It was a sweet, simple moment, full of love and joy. 2 days later. It was a rainy afternoon, and we decided to cook a cozy meal together. The rain was softly tapping against the window, creating a soothing backdrop to our kitchen adventure. Andre and I had planned to make a classic French dish, and we were excited to work on it together. We donned aprons and started gathering ingredients. Andre was chopping vegetables with focused precision, while I was stirring a pot on the stove. The kitchen smelled incredible, filled with the aroma of onions, garlics, and herbs. Andre looked up from his chopping board, and he smiled at me as I was stirring the pot on the stove. "You is doing très bon. Looks good." I glanced over and grinned. "Thanks. Everything's coming together perfectly." We continued working side by side and occasionally bumping each other as we moved around the kitchen, cooking dinner together. As the meal prepared completion, we set the table together too. As we worked, Andre reached into a bag and pulled out a croissant. He held it up with a dramatic flourish. "And we eat croissants for dessert." I took one look at the croissant and raised an eyebrow. Croissant for dessert? Really? That's so stereotypically French, almost cliché? Andre laughed, clearly amused by the teasing. "Cliché? Maybe, but croissants are delicious." I took the croissant from him and gave it a playful squeeze, making it squish. "Look at this thing. It's like a flaky pillow. How am I supposed to take it seriously as a dessert?" Andre chuckled, shaking his head. "It's not a pillow. It's very tasty." I took a bite and made an exaggerated, thoughtful face. "Okay, I admit, it's pretty good. But if this pillow gives me a sugar high later, I'm blaming you." Andre grinned, clearly pleased with himself. "Deal. If you become too hyper, I will take care." I laughed and took another bite of the croissant, savoring the flaky layers. The food was as amazing as we hoped. We ate and chatted, enjoying the simple pleasure of a homemade meal and each other's company. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside we felt warm and happy, wrapped in the comfort of our little home. 3 weeks later. The work was turning out better than I had ever hoped, and surprisingly, you get a lot more leaves here in France than compared to the States. So, on one such off day, Andre and I decided to spend the day exploring Paris and seeing the sights. I was excited to discover the city with him, and he was thrilled to show me his favorite spots. "Today we visit La Tour Eiffel," he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's, must-see." We reached the base of the Eiffel Tower, and I couldn't help but be awestruck by its grandeur. "Wow," I said, looking up at the tower. "It's incredible. Can't believe we're finally here." Andre smiled, clearly pleased with my reaction. "Oui, c'est magnifique. You, want to go up?" "Definitely," I replied. "Let's do it." We joined a line for tickets and soon found ourselves at the base of the tower, ready to take the elevator up. As we reached the top, we stepped out and were greeted with breathtaking views of Paris. Looked out over the city, feeling a rush of happiness. It's more beautiful than I had ever imagined. Thank you for bringing me here. Andre took my hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to share this with you." "This is perfect," I said, leaning into Andre as we watched the city lights come to life. Couldn't ask for a better day. Andre smiled and kissed my forehead. "Merci." We stayed on the observation tower for as long as we could, enjoying the view and each other's company. The Eiffel Tower's illuminated sparkle was a beautiful backdrop to our moment. It felt like a dream come true. A month later. No, you're doing wrong. This is pedantic. Popular game France," Andre said, smiling. "It's simple, but fun." It was a Saturday afternoon, and Andre had invited me to a traditional French event that he was excited about. He described it as sort of a local fair with games, music, and food. When we arrived, I was struck by the lively atmosphere. There were booths selling everything from cheeses to wines to handcrafted goods. The smell of freshly baked bread and pastries filled the air. Andre seemed to be in his element, chatting with friends and explaining different things to me. As we wandered through the fair, we came upon a booth where people were participating in a traditional French game involving throwing metal balls. I tried to follow along, but the game seemed a bit confusing. Didn't quite get the point of throwing metal balls at a small wooden ball. Not sure I get this game, I admitted. Besides, it seems like a random game. Let's just move on. Andre's smile faltered slightly. It's not random, it's a tradition. You need to understand it better. I shrugged, feeling a bit defensive. I just don't see the appeal. It's not something we do back home. I'm used to more competitive games, I guess. Andre's expression shifted to irritation. You don't have to. It is common here. Part of my culture. I thought you'd be interested. I felt the pang of frustration. I am interested, but I don't have to pretend to like something just because it's important to you. It's okay to not to enjoy everything about another culture. Andre's face reddened. It's not about pretending. It's about respect. If you don't like it, maybe you should have stayed home. I was taken aback by his harsh words. Are you serious? I came here to support you and learn about your culture. Just because I don't enjoy everything doesn't mean I'm disrespecting it. Andre's eyes flashed with frustration. It's just disappointing when you don't even try to appreciate it. This wasn't the first time we were fighting on something so trifle. Lately it's been happening a lot. There are lots of things that I don't understand that are common here. So many cultural and social differences. At first I thought it was normal for us to just have differences after all. We two belonged into different worlds, but lately it feels like it's been affecting us a lot more than I expected in all the wrong ways. 3 weeks later. Bonsoir, mon amour, Andre said, dropping his bag on the floor as he returned from his work looking exhausted. Hey, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. You're home late again. Is this going to be the norm now? Andre sighed and rubbed his eyes. Busy period. I have to finish these reports. It is my job. I couldn't hold back my frustration. It's been every day this week, Andre. I get that your job is important, but it feels like you're always working. We barely have any time together. Andre looked up, his expression turning from tired to irritated. I don't understand. It is how it works here. Work is demanding. It is normal. I threw my hands up in exasperation. But this isn't normal. Back in the States, we value work-life balance. People work hard, but they also make time for their personal lives. I feel like I'm just waiting around for you to finish working. Andre's frustration was evident. It is not just... It is a matter of dedication. If you don't understand work ethic, it is difficult to explain. I felt my face flushed with anger. I'm trying to understand, but it feels like you're putting your job before everything else. I thought we'd have time for each other, but it seems like work always comes first. Andre's face hardened. I can't stop working. I have responsibilities. If you don't understand that, it's hard to make this work. The argument was going nowhere. It felt like a full-on fight. It actually was a full-on fight. I threw my hands up in frustration. I'm trying to understand, but it feels like you're not even willing to try. We're supposed to be in this together, but right now, it feels like we're miles apart. As the evening wore on, we fell into a cold silence. With nothing for us to say to each other, Andre retreated to his work, and I was left alone with my thoughts, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. We ended the night without much of a resolution, and a weird coldness hung heavy in the air all throughout the night. The next week. Landon, this is Julian, Andre said, turning to me with a smile. Mon ami, friend. Hi, nice to meet you, I said, extending my hand. Julian took it with a firm but friendly grip, his smile polite but measured. Enchanté, Landon, Julian said in perfect English, though his accent was thick. Andre had been talking about introducing me to his friend Julian for a while now. I had heard his name come up in conversations. Andre always spoke highly of him, someone he knew from work. I didn't think much of it at first, but now standing here, seeing him, tall, well-dressed, and charmingly French, couldn't help but feel insecure. You must be a good friend. I could tell by the way Andre's face lit up as they exchanged quick cheek kisses, laughing, gibbering away in fast French. They were already so comfortable with each other, and I felt like I was intruding on something private. The two of them quickly fell into a conversation, talking fast in French, words slipping in between them that I couldn't keep up with. I caught a few phrases here and there, but they spoke too quickly, laughing at inside jokes I didn't understand. I tried to keep a smile on my face, but inside, something twisted. The ease between them, the comfort. They were so close, like they had been a whole world that I wasn't a part of. And it didn't help that Julien seemed perfect. He knew every little detail about French customs, the way Andre ordered his coffee, to the polite nods he gave to the waiters. Meanwhile, I was the outsider, still fumbling through conversations and trying not to mispronounce French words. At one point, they slipped into a conversation that felt different. Andre's expression shifted, slightly more serious, as he and Julien spoke in hushed tones. I couldn't catch everything, but I heard enough to get a sinking feeling in my gut. Words like étranger, foreigner, and différent, difference, stood out, and I couldn't shake the thought they were talking about me. What are you guys talking about? I asked, trying to keep my tone light, though the frustration was bubbling up inside me. Andre blinked and he looked over at me, seeming to realize I was still there. Oh, we were just talking about work, he said, but there was something in his voice that felt off. Work? It didn't sound like work. The way Julien looked at me, a little too friendly, made my skin crawl. Was he bad-mouthing me? Criticizing me for not fitting in? I felt a wave of insecurity wash over me. As we walked back to our apartment, Andre seemed in a good mood, but I couldn't shake my frustration any longer. You two look pretty cozy back there, I muttered, trying to sound casual, but failing miserably. Andre gave me a confused look. Cozy? What, you mean? Bit my lip, trying to keep calm. I don't know, just felt like I wasn't even there half the time. You guys were speaking so fast, I couldn't follow anything. Felt like you were having your own little conversation, and I was just there. Andre frowned. We were just talking. Julien and I know each other for years. It's normal. Yeah, well, it didn't feel normal to me, I snapped, the jealousy creeping into my voice. And what were you saying about me? I heard you talking about foreigners and differences. Were you bad-mouthing me behind my back? Andre's expression shifted, his irritation rising. No, we not bad-mouthing you. It is... Why would you think that? I shrugged, trying to hide how much it bothered me. I don't know. Maybe because I felt like I didn't belong the whole time. Julien's perfect, and you two are so close. It's like I'm the odd one out. Andre sighed, running a hand through his hair. Julien, my friend, but you is more important to me, Landon. I smiled a small smile at him as he kissed my cheek, but the jealousy lingered. Even though Andre had reassured me, the knot in my chest remained. 3 days later. It had been a long day, and I was trying to make things easier for both of us by tidying up around the apartment. Figured I'd do something nice for Andre and take care of some of the household chores, starting with taking out the trash. Simple enough, right? Well, apparently not in France. I had no idea that there were specific rules about separating the recycling from the trash and which bags to use. I just put everything in one bag and set it by the door, ready to take it out later. When Andre came home and saw it, his face immediately changed. The frustration was written all over his features before he even said a word. Landon, he said, his voice already strained. What is this? I looked at the trash bag, confused. It's the trash? I was going to take it out later. Andre sighed heavily, rubbing his forehead. You can't mix all. Recycling, compost, normal waste. They have rules here. We separate it all. I've told you this before. I shrugged, feeling a little defensive. Didn't think it was a big deal. I'll fix it, no problem. But Andre wasn't letting it up. You don't think it's a big deal. You can't even do this right, Landon. His tone was sharp, more cutting than usual. That hit me harder than it should have. I stared at him, my frustration bubbling up. Well, maybe you should get Julien to do it, since he's so perfect at everything French. I'm sure he would have sorted the trash flawlessly. Andre blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift. What have Julien to do with this? I crossed my arms, feeling the bitterness rise in my chest. Oh, come on, Andre. Don't act like I don't notice how close you guys are. He's perfect at everything here. He knows all the customs, the language, the little details I'm apparently failing at. Maybe he'd be a better fit for you. Andre's eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed in anger. You're jealous of Julian. He is just my friend. Am I? I shot back, my voice rising. Do you think I don't see how different you are around him? How comfortable you look. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to fit in, trying to learn, and all you do is criticize me. Andre's face hardened. That is not fair. I tried to help you. You making this something it's not. No, what's not fair is how you expect me to just magically know how things work here, I said, my frustration spilling out. I'm trying, Andre. But every time I do something wrong, it's like you're just disappointed in me. And then Julian walks in, and it's like he can do no wrong. Andre threw up his hands in exasperation. You blame me for being close with my friend. Julian is part of my life. He understands. He knows how things work here. It's different. And what, I don't understand you? I asked, my voice cracking slightly. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'll never understand this French life of yours. Maybe you should just go be with someone who gets it. Who gets you. Andre's eyes flashed with anger. How can you say that? You think I want this? You think it's easy trying to make this work? I can't explain everything all the time. And you don't seem to want to adapt. I'm trying, I shouted, feeling the weight of the past months pressing down on me. But it's hard when every little thing I do is wrong. When you look at me and I'm just some American who doesn't get it. I feel like I'm never going to measure up. Andre's face softened just for a moment, but then his frustration came rushing back. You don't have to measure up, but you need to try harder to fit in. I stood there, the words hanging between us like a wall we couldn't break through. The anger and hurt I'd been carrying felt like it'd been swallowing me whole, and I realized with a heavy heart that maybe we were both asking for something the other couldn't give. Maybe you're right, I said quietly, my voice trembling. Maybe I don't fit in here. Maybe I never will. Andre's expression flickered as if he wanted to say something but stayed silent. The distance between us had never felt so vast, and in that moment, I made a decision that had been gnawing at me for a while. I think I'm going to move out, I said, my heart heavy with the words. This isn't working, Andre. We're not working. Andre looked at me, his face a mixture of shock and hurt, but he didn't say anything. Didn't expect him to. The silence between us said enough. Without another word, I turned and walked toward a bedroom. And for the first time, I wasn't sure we'd ever be able to find our way back to each other. 3 months later. It had been 3 months since I'd left Andre. 3 months of trying to move on, telling myself that leaving was the right thing to do. But as much as I tried to focus on my job and rebuild my life, I couldn't help but feel the empty hole in my heart. I missed him. That's why when I walked into the office one morning and found out my company was collaborating with a new French firm, I had no idea what was coming. It wasn't until I was called into a meeting with the heads of the other company that I felt the shock hit me like a punch to the gut. Andre. He was standing there in a tailored suit, looking as sharp as ever. His blue eyes focused on some papers in front of him. My heart sank. What were the chances that out of all the companies in France, it would be his? I froze in the doorway, my stomach flipping over as my manager introduced me to the team from the French firm. Andre's name was the last one she mentioned, and the moment she said it, he looked up. Our eyes locked, and for a second, the room seemed to fall away. I could tell from the way his expression faltered that he was just as surprised as I was. But just like that, he put on a professional mask, his features smoothing out. He nodded once, briskly, and I forced myself to do the same. took my seat across from him, trying to keep my emotions in check. The meeting dragged on, but all I could think about was how close he was, just a few feet away. We didn't say a word to each other, and even when we were asked to coordinate for the project, we kept it strictly business. Cold, formal, distant. When the meeting finally ended, I gathered my things as quickly as possible, avoiding his gaze. But as I left the conference room, I couldn't shake the feeling that working together was going to be harder than I ever imagined. 2 weeks later. The days that followed were awkward and tense. Andre and I barely spoke outside of work-related discussions, and even then, it was clipped and formal. But today, things took a turn. I was in the middle of reviewing some documents for the project when one of Andre's colleagues, a man named Philippe, came to my desk. He had been mean and snarky with me from the start, and I could tell he wasn't thrilled about working with an American. You know, Philippe started in French, his tone dripping with condensation. It would be easier for everyone if you actually understood how these things are done here. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my cool, even though his words stung. I think I'm doing just fine. If there's something specific you want to explain, I'm all ears. Philippe crossed his arms, shaking his head. Your fine isn't good enough. This isn't America. Things work differently here, and your ignorance is slowing us down. If you can't, maybe you should just consider going back. My jaw clenched. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Andre appeared out of nowhere, stepping between us. Philippe, ça suffit, Andre said sharply, his eyes blazing with anger. Landon is doing his job. If you have a problem, take it up with me, not him. Philippe blinked, clearly not expecting Andre to defend me. But, sir... No. Andre cut him off. We are all working together. There is no room for attitudes like yours. Philippe muttered something under his breath and stalked off, leaving me standing there, stunned. I hadn't expected Andre to jump to my defense, especially not with how cold we'd been toward each other lately. Thanks, I said quietly, my eyes meeting his. For the first time in months, there was no anger or resentment between us, just something softer. Andre nodded, his expression unreadable. He was out of line. I won't let anyone treat you like that. I wanted to say more, to tell him how much it meant to me, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, and for a brief moment, it felt like things between us weren't as broken as they seemed. About 3 weeks later. Weeks passed, and despite the initial coldness, things between Andre and I had started to thaw. We weren't back to where we used to be, but the tension had eased, and there were moments where we'd exchange a small smile or laugh at a shared memory. But even with that, something inside me had shifted. The last few months had been hard. Living in France, struggling to adapt, the weight of our breakup, and now working with Andre, seeing him every day but not being with him, it was starting to wear me down. One night after a particularly stressful day at work, I found myself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept racing, going over everything. Our time together, the fights, the project, how hard it was to be here. And in that quiet moment, I realized something. I couldn't stay here anymore. Not like this. The next morning, I walked into the office with a heavy heart. I had already emailed my manager explaining that I was thinking of returning to the States once the project was over. The truth was, I needed to leave. For my own sanity. For my own healing. Later that day, I found myself sitting across from Andre in a meeting. He didn't know about my decision yet, and I wasn't sure how or if I was going to tell him. But as I glanced at him, a knot formed in my chest. This wasn't what I imagined for us. And it hurt. More than I was willing to admit. When the meeting ended, Andre caught me by the door. Landon, is everything okay? I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. Yeah, everything's fine. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. And soon, I'd have to make the hardest decision of my life. A week later, I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at my suitcase. It was strange seeing it there, packed and ready to go, after everything that had happened. I ran a hand through my hair, sighing. Tomorrow, I'd be leaving France, leaving Andre. It still didn't feel real. I had called him the night before and talked. Well, more like avoided the real conversation. I told him I was leaving, that I couldn't stay in France anymore. It had been hard for both of us. Still, I had made my decision. I needed to go back to the States to get some distance, to clear my head. And Andre, as much as it hurt him, didn't try to stop me. I think deep down he understood. Or at least he didn't want to push me anymore. Knock on my door snapped me out of my thoughts. I already knew Andre was coming to visit me, so I just went to open the door. "You are ready?" he asked, his accent thick but his words clear enough. His blue eyes flicked to the suitcase, then back to me. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yeah, almost." There was a long pause, the kind that made the air between us feel heavy. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable, but not leaving. Andre struggled, failing to put his emotions in a sentence. I know, understanding him better than he understood himself. He didn't respond right away. I could feel his gaze on me. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "It's not what I wanted." "I know it's not," I replied, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "But what's left for us here? We've tried, and it hasn't worked. We are too different." Andre walked further into the apartment, sitting down beside me as I sat on the couch. His shoulder brushed against mine, and for a moment, I wanted to forget everything and just lean into him. But I couldn't. Not now. "I hate this," he said quietly, his fingers brushing against mine. "I hate this so much." I turned to face him, taking the pained expression on his face. "Me too, Andre." He stayed quiet for a long time, then let out a deep sigh, standing up. "I will drive you to the airport tomorrow." I shook my head, trying to keep my emotions in check. "No, I don't want to put either of us through that." He gave me a long, sad look, then turned and left the apartment. I sat there in silence, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. Tomorrow, I'll leave for good. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. The next morning. The airport was busier than I expected. People bustled around, dragging suitcases and chattering in French, their voices blending into a constant hum. I stood by the gate, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach as the final boarding call echoed through the speakers. This was it. I was really leaving. A voice over the intercom announced the final call for my flight, and I grabbed my bag, heading toward the gate. Just as I reached the line, I heard it. "Landon!" I froze, my heart skipping a beat. Slowly, I turned around, my eyes scanning the crowd. And then I saw him. Andre, running through the terminal like a madman, his breath coming in ragged gasps. People stepped out of his way, giving him curious looks, but he didn't seem to care. He skidded to a stop in front of me, his chest heaving. "Don't go!" "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He took a step closer, his blue eyes burning with something I hadn't seen in a long time. I can't let you go. Not like this. Andre, I have to. We've tried and it hasn't worked. No. He cut me off, shaking his head. I love you, Landon. I love you so much. And I was stupid. I let you go. My heart pounded in my chest as his words sank in. "You love me?" "Oui," he said, his voice breaking. I love you. I don't care about the fights or the distance. I want you. Only you. Now and always." Before I could respond, Andre dropped to one knee, pulling out a small ring from his pocket. My eyes widened in shock. "Landon, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Will you marry me? I stared at him, completely stunned. This was Andre, my Andre, proposing to me in the middle of a crowded airport. He was speaking perfect English, something I knew he must have taken a lot of effort. And then it hit me. He had been learning for me. Tears stung my eyes as I looked down at him. I don't know what to say. Andre smiled softly, his eyes full of love. Say yes. Please. I let out a shaky breath, then whispered, Oui. Andre's eyes lit up, and before I knew it, we were crashing into each other, our lips meeting in a desperate, passionate kiss. The world around us faded, and the first time in months, everything felt right. When we finally pulled away, Andre slipped the ring onto my finger, his hands trembling. Je t'aime, he whispered. Je t'aime aussi, I replied, smiling through the tears. And in that moment, I knew. This was it. This was forever. As the weeks passed after that day at the airport, Andre and I, slowly this time, got back into our rhythm. This time he was more patient with me, and I tried harder to understand things. It wasn't long before we both confessed something that made us laugh. I had been secretly learning French for him, and he'd been studying English for me. All that time, we had been trying to bridge the gap in our own ways, without even realizing it. Within a year, we got married in a small ceremony in France, with both of our families there. It was a perfect blend of our worlds. French elegance with a touch of American simplicity. Andre's vows were in English and mine were in French. It showed our love and the efforts we were ready to put in to keep our forever intact. Would you give love a second chance? Hey, thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.